Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to our PAX East 2022 recap, wrap-up, retrospective, our PAX East episode.
Yes, and we are joined by the incredible Frankie Bradley-Lestrange, who accompanied us to Boston.
That I did. Yes. And I lived to tell the tale.
That's true.
So did we all here on this episode. Frankie is, if you don't listen to Reignite, Frankie is the non-Matt regular of Reignite as they deep dive into BioWare's oeuvre of space romance and hijinks.
Yes, correct.
I think describing me as not Matt is probably the most accurate description.
That's how I often describe myself to people as far as this show. I'm the non-Matt part. The Zissou, as it were.
Yeah, it was fun. So the three of us drove. We're all from the same-ish area. And we hauled ass to Boston for the weekend where we got to see a lot of cool gaming stuff and talk to a bunch of cool folks. And I thought it'd be fun for us to do a little wrap-up to talk about kind of the stuff we saw, what we loved, what we hated, why we tolerated each other for 3/4 days.
Why do you have to be so mean? I think we did more than tolerate each other. I think we bonded. I think we thrived. I think our friendships have flourished.
I had a lovely time.
Yeah, I did too. I think Matt's just being a grump.
It was fine.
It's for the clicks.
Wow.
For the clicks. But yeah, I mean, we all got to see a bunch of cool stuff, and we will remind you at the end of the episode. But you're going to actually, this same day, get to hear a series of interviews that we did with different developers, creators, and the like from PAX East. What was interesting for me about PAX is that Frankie and I both actually went to the very first PAX East many, many years ago. And I barely remembered it. But getting back there, time is a lake, blah, 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 all of that nonsense. But like getting back there when we went, it all kind of came rushing back to me, the layout of the space, you know, how they ran the event and stuff. And it was just kind of nice, you know, after the pandemic, which is obviously not over, and we are all trying to be as safe as possible. It was nice to actually be amongst people and like our people, as it were, the nerds of the world, as it were.
Yeah, I would say so. It's definitely been the entirety of this time, while we've gone through waves and nadirs and vaccinations and everything else over the last 2 years, and as things evolve and continue, I would definitely say that conventions are something that I've missed. It's nothing that I was going to throw caution to the wind just to make happen or to go to. And every convention that went, we're holding off and we're canceling because of that. I was like, great. I hope you survive. I will do what I can to help with that, but otherwise. And there's, of course, things that fall through the cracks and things like this, but they were fairly safe. I felt fairly safe. And with that in mind, it did feel as good as I hoped it would be to, again, go back and engage and revel and network and chat and fangasm and everything. All of it.
I think let's start by talking a little bit about some of the things we saw that we probably really enjoyed and like caught us off guard. I mean, I think to start, for me, one of the games that I played that I didn't expect to love as much as I did, and it is a game that we do feature an interview with later, is a game called Uragun, which is currently on Steam in early access. It is a twin-stick shooter where you play as a mech. It's like if the top-down parts of Contra, and I'm blanking on the name of the mech game now, that Respawn made, and it's killing me. We reference it in the interview. Anyway, it's a mix of like mech shooters and twin stick shooters, and it was a lot of fun. The development team were really nice. We got to meet a bunch of folks who worked on the project, and I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did. Full disclosure, Geoff and I know different folks within the PR industry who set up us up with appointments. Also, you get sent on the press list. So, you know, all sorts of folks reach out, and you can't say yes to everything. But friend of the show and previous SideQuest host, Wout, sent this to us and was like, hey, I think you guys would dig this. You should check it out. It's one of our clients. So we did, and I deeply enjoyed it. I thought it was actually a really fun game with a really interesting premise.
Yeah, I would say that was definitely the surprise hit for me. Again, given that this is the first in-person convention for me in a long time, we did do some press for some digital stuff, but sifting through the list of press emails that we got on this was delightfully overwhelming. So when we walked to the booth, I'll be honest, I was like, I know we looked this up. I know we researched this. What is this game? And then once we started watching, I remembered the trailers I watched. I remembered the materials. And yeah, I'd gotten a vibe of a bit of LAPD Future, a bit of Machine Hunter for the PS1, which is my personal nostalgia. And it is, I believe they described it as like a top-down Doom in its own way, as far as like a sense of narrative while mostly guns. And it was a great deal of fun. And it was, we were pegged on that one. Like that was a great deal of fun. It was satisfying. It was challenging. It had a great deal of accessibility options to it as well. And that was something that you'll see if you listen to the interviews we try to ask about with a lot of these games, because PAX, I've only gone a few times in the past few years and it's been very sporadic. So I don't remember how large of a presence like Nintendo or Sony or Microsoft have at something like PAX East, but the width and breadth of the indie space is a great space to be asking those questions and to be seeking that out. And Eurogun is not unique in that they were having those, but again, there's a lot of those like twin stick shooter, big guns, everything else, but also a sense of difficulty curve, a sense of score attack being the difficulty rather than it being get good. And I enjoyed that while I was also dying constantly and just blowing things up as a mech just looking for their pilot.
Yep.
There's heart.
And I will say that having been to PAX more recently than anyone else here at 2020 before the world ended, Nintendo did have a booth, and like a lot of the major publishers had a booth. Whereas this time at PAX East, it was more indie focused. Not a lot of the major publishers were there. Of course, Tiny Build had a giant booth, which they've done in the past, but like for the most part,
yeah, they were kind of the large booth.
They were, but like none of the major publishers. And it's hard to say, right? Like, because I consider Larian a major publisher now, and they had a booth for Baldur's Gate 3, which is still coming. But like, I just didn't. Yeah, there was no AAA studios in the sense of what we expect from like Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo this year. And it actually, I think, made it a more intimate experience all around for wandering the floor. Before we get too way off base, I'm curious if Frankie had like a surprise, a game they got to see that, or an experience, or even a vendor they met with that like kind of caught them off guard they didn't expect to enjoy as much as they did.
I don't know about caught me off guard per se. Perhaps I was most surprised that I was able to connect so well with the founder of Geekify. His booth was one that Geoff and I had happened upon because we saw these beautiful bags and we wanted to know more about them. And as we got to know John, who is the founder of Geekify, I started to remember that I actually spend a lot of time on Geekify's website. I just forgot. I was like, why does all this stuff look familiar? Oh, because most of it's in my wish list. Oh, that would be why. But it was just such a delight to talk to John and to learn about how he got into creating in this way and how he went from being an English major to making merchandise that is commissioned by movie sets and by cosplayers and by like famous people and getting licenses for things like Neopets, for example. It's just really cool. It was really fun to talk to him and learn some things.
Yeah, it absolutely was. Like, he had just such a wonderful affability about him. And I don't want to quite call it a gee whiz. People are like asking me to do stuff, but he was as overjoyed to be doing this and selling this as we were to be finding it and talking to him about it. And there were plenty of those little kind of moments throughout the weekend. And I think that definitely exemplifies my takeaway of the positive feelings of PAX East.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think what makes PAX such an interesting convention versus a lot of other video game and comic book conventions is that PAX has always had this air of it's for the general audience. Like, it's an industry event as much as any other convention is, but there's a love for the general audience and the gamers, as it were. The people who are there wanting to just enjoy themselves and see the cool stuff. And I really did on Saturday get to walk around quite a bit and just like kind of take in the space and see the different games, reconnect with previous guests of the show or just people that we've met through the show. One thing that was really nice is I'd been spending the last 2 years talking to a lot of folks within and around the games industry on Discord and online, and then getting to hang out with them do karaoke with some folks on Thursday night and things like that was also really nice. It was nice to re-engage in those spaces with these creators that I admire and these reporters and journalists that I really admire and get to hang out with them and get to know them better in this physical space.
Yeah, arguing over Final Fantasy tier lists, the important stuff.
Right, exactly. Before we start talking more about the games that we saw, I do want to talk about how lucky and privileged I felt to get to do a panel at this PAX East. We're going to include at a later date the full audio of that panel as a bonus episode, but getting to do not only just a panel, but a panel about the representation of queerness in gaming with the two of you, helmed by Frankie, and then also with some incredible guests was really nice. And my first panel experience in 2 years and just ever one that I had submitted for. And so that was really cool. And an experience that I couldn't explain. Like, I was so nervous about it, but after getting to do it and then being done with it, I was so overjoyed with the experience. I wanted to ask you, Frankie, a little bit about how you navigated kind of pulling together the ideas for this, because the way you helped us create the outline and kind of decide the flow of the panel was really great and worked really well. Does that come from just us having podcasted as long as we did, or are you pulling from those skills from other places too?
A little bit from us having podcasted as long as we did. The fact that I build outlines for every episode and make sure that we're hitting all of our conversation points and that we're asking thoughtful questions of each other, things like that. But also, I do a lot of work as a member of a networking group, and I do a lot of note-taking and preparation for that. So that kind of helped. Also, I spend a lot of time just talking to people every week. Just every week. Talking to people nonstop. So it didn't feel like it was going to be a big deal to me. Like, I know that you were nervous and your nerves were totally valid, but I couldn't bring myself to be nervous because I was like, I just want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak. Everybody gets to ask something thoughtful. Everybody gets to cover the things that they care about. And that's why I made you guys listen to my questions over and over again.
No, that was appreciated. I wasn't so much worried about it being like we get up there and there's nothing to say. There was enough folks, enough diverse viewpoints that it was more a question of like, are we all going to have some time? Are we all going to be able to? And having those landmarks, those anchor points was very handy. It made it a good sense of just, we have an hour, okay? We could go forever. We have an hour.
Yes, having an agenda is very important. Knowing your kind of timelines is good. I think that we could have done a little bit better giving ourselves more time for
Agreed.
Q&A. I didn't anticipate so many people wanting to ask us questions. That's what it was. That's why I didn't allot so much time for it.
I definitely had that moment where just like, oh my God, people are asking us things. Yay!
But it was very successful. A lot of people really appreciated it. And people came up to me and complimented me on moderating. I was like, I just asked them questions.
Yes, and that feels like the bar is so low, and yet. So thank you for clearing it with a blom.
The bar was so low. And I was just like, all I did was like keep them on track. That's
Panel
it.
wrangling is a skill.
It's true. It is true. I've seen it be pretty chaotic, and that can be fun too. But I appreciated the wrangling, and of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our panelists, the Critical Bard, Lowry, and Rhea as well. Like, I was very familiar with the Critical Bard, aka Omega Jones, but you introduced me to Lowry and Rhea, and they were incredible as well. And to see all of these different people interact and ask thoughtful questions of each other and comment on each other's thoughts, and it worked out really well. And I'm very excited for our listeners to get to hear it eventually.
Yeah. It was a good combo of people. Rhea introduced me to Lowry when I explained to her the situation that we were having and what we were hoping to achieve. And she was like, Lowry is the best person ever. Please invite him. And she and Lowry are super close. And I also wanted Rhea on the panel because we didn't have her perspective represented. And I thought that was also really important. And I've known Rhea for about over a year now. We game together for Archives of the Dragon, and our characters collaborate a lot, and we do a lot of storytelling together. So I know that Rhea has a unique perspective, and I really wanted to share it with other people.
Yeah, and I think that was always the goal of the panel, is like, as much as it was being presented by CPOV, we wanted to bring in diverse perspectives that weren't us, that could engage in the audience in ways that we just couldn't, as three very extremely white people.
It was an evolution on the notion of this show being a conversation.
Yeah.
And I look forward to where we can take that in the future.
Yeah, for sure. So again, keep an ear out. We will definitely be sharing that audio from that panel as soon as we can. I do want to talk more about, the games of it all. And like, I think it's easy to say that I know Geoff and I's most euphoric experience, just because, again, it's one of the interviews that we got to conduct and that you'll hear more on later. But there is a new Ninja Turtles game coming out, being created by Ninja Turtle fans in the vein of Streets of Rage and all those old school beat 'em ups. And we got to play it. And like, anything that you've heard about this game and your worry that it might be what you remember the games being like and not actually living up to that memory, I can dissuade you of all those worries, because it absolutely lived up to every expectation I had and surpassed it.
The first two levels are at least incredible. I can't speak to past that, but I can only imagine it continues. And no, it's a lot of fun. And it was also a unique thing of, I tend to, with anticipated games, I don't go full media blackout, but I try to temper my expectations versus hype, because it's very easy to get caught up in things. It's very easy to watch trailer over and over again to get caught up in stuff. And when people are like, you're going to love this, oh my God, you're going to love this, and any random person is like, this is going to be incredible, I start to doubt it. Again, I just sort of push back to temper my expectations. But our appointment for Shredder's Revenge was late on Saturday, like later in the day. And so a lot of the folks we got to talk to, it's like, oh, what are some of the things you're doing? Shredder's Revenge, you are going to lose your mind. It's like, okay, this is exciting, but okay, fine. They were right. And Matt, you hit the nail on the head of, it has modern conveniences and modern design ideals, but plays and feels and is as good as you remember it being, without it exactly being what you remember it being. Because if you go back, you know how it is when you go back on retro games, but it feels good. It's made with care and love and talent. And what we got to play and experience shone through brilliantly.
Yeah, for sure. And to be getting this and the Cowabunga collection in the same year is kind of really exciting for Ninja Turtle fans. And so definitely tune into that interview, because I think it was great. And also, like, if you get a chance between now and the release to get your hands on it, a demo, play it at all, like, do it. It was so much fun, and I can't wait to actually get my hands on the full game.
It just feels good to play. It was just a lot of goddamn fun, which is what that game, that genre, that experience should be.
Absolutely.
One that stuck out to me now that we're looking back was Cursed to Golf.
Okay, sure.
I enjoyed that one a lot. It's sort of a physics platformer, but it's a golf game.
Yeah.
And in the past few years, we've gotten a lot of weird golf games. Maybe it's just something that I'm noticing and I'm ignoring others, but golf feels like the sport that's getting weird games right now. We had our Mutant League hockey and football back in the 16-bit era, and now we are getting What the Golf and Golf Story. And maybe golf just lends itself towards weird developments in RPGs and physics, and I'm fine with that. I don't care much for the actual game, but I love it in video games. And having a little bit of a card element to it, a little bit of a rogue light element where it's not procedurally generated levels, but the levels are pulled from a stack of way too many for a regular round of 18 holes.
Right.
And so it lends itself towards very distinct puzzles and cool ideas, and getting to experience that and be sort of guided through it. It was a game that some of these games that we played at PAX, I enjoyed myself the whole time through. Some of them, I knew I'd enjoy myself and just had a great time, like Turtles. What the Golf was like, all right, this looks good. This sounds kind of cool. Okay. And this was one where I just felt my excitement mount as I played, as new systems were added, as quirky characters appeared, as things changed. It was like, all right, I'm on board for this. I'm excited for this strange golf purgatory physics game. I want it. Excellent. And it was one that I found myself recommending to people when I got home. It's like, what were good games you played? Eurogun was on the top of the list. Got to talk about Turtles. And I think Curse the Golf was usually number 3.
What about you, Frankie? Were there any games that stood out to you or things that you saw that you really liked?
So I didn't really play a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the lookout for games that could qualify for Reignite's parameters.
Sure.
You know, something that's a little more narrative, something that the player can really guide. And I didn't find anything like that, much to my disappointment. But I did play Chinatown Detective Agency.
Oh, yeah. I'd heard about that one.
I didn't get to play that one.
It was really cool. It had an atmospheric narrative. The plot, as far as I understood it, was that you are a detective in Chinatown and you are pulled into all these conspiracies and solving these cases. And the hook for the game is that you have to do your own research in order to solve the case.
Oh.
You have to, you'll get a clue and then you have to do your own Googling to figure out what it is. For example, you find out that the person that you're trying to locate went to a specific town. But if you look up the town, there are 3 different towns in 3 different countries.
Interesting.
So you have to kind of use the clues you picked up so far to figure out which one of those towns is correct. So that way you can go to the correct one. Otherwise, you're just flying around trying to hope that you land on the right one.
Huh, that's a hell of a twist. I like that.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It hits that noir kind of genre. Like I said, it was dark, it was atmospheric. There are ciphers to solve.
Ooh.
I do love a cipher.
Yeah.
I played through the first case. The flight mechanic is not the best, in my opinion, because you have to book yourself a flight and you can't board until 3 hours before the flight. The time moves. There are too many mechanics for you to watch in order to successfully board a flight.
Sounds as stressful as real flying.
That could be a whole game unto itself.
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah, it was kind of stressful.
Road to LaGuardia.
Yeah, it was kind of stressful, that part, but then the actual crime solving was more interesting. I enjoyed the concept because I love crime. I just love crime.
Sure.
So for me, it was fun.
Who doesn't love crime?
And I also played a couple of board games. I played a couple of party games. Nothing to like really get excited about. But I did pick up a game that I'm really excited to play called Space Cats Fight Fascism.
Amazing.
Go on.
And it is about a resistance of cats who are trying to take down the fascist rats.
Amazing.
It's mostly done with cards and with little cubes. I think there's some dice involved. It just looked really cute and fun. And who doesn't love taking down fascism?
Especially with space cats.
Yeah, exactly. So
It's incredible.
It seemed fun. It seemed cute. I picked that up. And I also picked up a game called Words to Solve, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a word mystery game.
Nice.
So it sounds like you found some good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd.
Oh, well, speaking of being a nerd and speaking of cards and things, I completely forgot that I got to play Power Chord, and that was incredible.
Power Chord was awesome. Jeff and I reuniting with a friend of the show, Michael Hammond, who I had met when he was showing off Forgone, a game that we got to interview one of the devs on much later on after PAX East in 2020. Michael remembered me from seeing him back in 2020 and was super excited to show me Power Chord, which I only went to see because both Jeff and friend of the show, Matthew Finneman, aka Finn, also flailed about it and how it's like Slay the Spire meets Rock Band. You have to go see the thing. And so I did. But yeah, it's not a mix I would have expected.
Right. It's a game that, to say it's like Slay the Spire is not a bad thing. Like, it gets you most of the way there as far as mechanics and idea, but you are playing not as one character, but as a full band, and each instrument has a different role. And I enjoy the choices that they made for those roles, and you can pick different characters to play those instruments. We only got to play a demo's worth. And so there's a certain amount of strategy there. Like, that extra wrinkle does so much for the formula. And the story of it is considerably more brutal legend in terms of a bit heavy metal, a bit over the top, but delightfully so, and leans into that kind of characterization, that sort of character. And I remember while I was waiting to sit down and play it, just chatting with some of the guys from Big Blue and being like, all right, I know you play as a rock band, you're doing all these things. I have to ask, how is the music? Because I love Slay the Spire. I've put so many hours into it, and I'll be honest, the music ain't great.
No.
It really isn't. The sound design's fine.
Yeah.
Caw, love it. But I genuinely love the Cultist sound. But otherwise, it's just kind of like I could take or leave it. And they're like, no, we know. Like, this has to be good. And I sat down, put the headphones on, and I was just like, all right, yeah, no, I'm here. You've got me. This is incredible. This, not just the music, but the sound design and the feedback on everything. I am very excited for that game. And yeah, I have a weird love for card games, especially digital card games, because then I don't have to actually physically collect them, and I can just learn the systems and just play weird games. I like that a lot. And this is Rock Bands. Yes. I'm very excited by it.
Yeah, I'm new to Slay the Spire. I only started playing it this year, and I'm very behind on that. But when I sat down to play this, I already had a general idea of how stuff worked because of that formula of that kind of card / roguelike element. But yeah, the music was great. The character designs were awesome, very diverse.
And those felt very Rock Band in a great way.
Yeah, and like one of the characters was, I believe, a bassist who like had an anger problem. He was like, every time he takes damage or like gets rage, he does more damage or something.
Well, that's a guitarist.
That was the guitarist.
Yeah, the bassist does like AoE and poison damage. The drummer was the tank, and the singer was support.
Yeah. It's really smartly designed, especially if you're a music nerd. There are a lot of Easter eggs, and I can probably safely assume, though they're not actually featured in our interview segment of this episode, we will be talking to the folks who make Power Chord at some point, I can promise you. They know how excited we are, and because we have an established relationship with Big Blue, I'm very excited to explore that and talk more about this game. It was definitely also a highlight for me.
Yeah.
I have another thing that I'm excited about. Do you remember when we met Aaron?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Aaron is a developer of a game called Beloved Rapture. Aaron attended our panel and was really taken with what we had to say, reached out to us. So we are building a relationship there. And from what I've seen of Beloved Rapture, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, it does.
I'm really excited for Aaron, and I really hope that he gets everything that he wants for this game because it's gorgeous. The story sounds so interesting, focuses on LGBT themes, and it's of the pixel art era. What was it that Aaron cited as the inspiration? Was it Chrono Trigger?
I think it was Chrono Trigger, yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
Which is, if you're invoking the Lord's name of Chrono Trigger in my vicinity, you have my attention.
In my Christian mind server. So I'm really excited about Beloved Rapture. I was actually just looking at the Patreon, and I was like, oh, I can pledge $10 a month and get a free copy of the final game. I think I might do that. So, Aaron, if you're listening, we support you, and we can't wait for your game.
You're here.
Yeah, totally. So Geoff and I got to play a very silly party game. The basic premise is, what if spiders with lightsabers?
Spider heck, yeah. Honestly, that was also a big surprise for me. It might have just been because we were playing it on Sunday, and look, I'll be honest, I was kind of done. We were all tired.
Yeah.
So just kind of like, all right, tiny builds, cool. Everything's so big and loud. Fine, hand me the controller. Oh, this is insane. I like this. It's a Smash Brothers-ish party game that just leans into weird physics, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It is about getting points within different arenas, and as soon as there's one person left standing, they get a point, you move on to a new arena. Off you go. You might be in that space, that room, for a few seconds. You might die instantly because you just want to swing on something.
Yeah.
I'm speaking from experience, and this is fine. And it sort of sets this pace quickly that you die, okay, next room. You'll get them next time, kids. Go for it. That allows for chaos with minimal frustration or minimized frustration. And Matt, it was you and me and then two other strangers playing this, and we just got really involved in it, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we've talked about this on the show before. I don't mind online co-op, but there's something about playing a 4-player game in the same room with people, especially when stupid stuff can happen. And Spider Hack definitely allows for that. You can swing on a web, you can crawl on all the surfaces, you can grab lightsabers, crossbows, guns of different varieties, rail guns, guns.
And the guns have kickback to them, and depending upon how powerful they are, they might knock you right off your platform. One of the guns is a lightsaber launcher.
Yeah, it's just a gun that shoots lightsabers.
And I think that one's got like the largest kickback because I definitely died firing that thing.
Yeah. But it allows for hilarity. It's a fun party game. The graphics are super basic and straightforward, which I think is to its favor because you can really keep track of what's on the screen.
Very vector graphics, but that like sort of HD vector, very Geometry Wars, I suppose, if I'm being basic in my comparison.
Yeah. And it was fun. Like it's currently, I believe, on Steam with only local co-op, but they're working on online and they're also working on other platforms and the possibility of crossplay. So like all of that, they're aware of what the audience would want out of this game. And so I think it does have legs.
It's got a lot of legs.
I hate you.
I know.
Hate you and everything you stand for.
I'm used to that at this point.
And there were definitely a lot of titles that I saw that I got to see little bits and pieces, but I didn't get my hands on controllers or anything. Speaking of tiny build, what was the name of the rhythm? Was it Rhythm Plant, Rhythm Island? I'm looking
something
this up.
like that. Yeah, where you walk along a path and it's a rhythm game and you have to avoid obstacles while also keeping to the beat. Yeah, I saw someone posting on Twitter the other day about
Rhythm Sprout.
Rhythm Sprout, yes, and it looked really cool.
Yeah, it was one that I remember looking over what they had. I was like, maybe I'll try to check that out, and it just didn't happen. And while we were waiting our turn for Spider Hack, Rhythm Sprout was right next to us, and I got caught up watching it. And I'm a sucker for rhythm games, so maybe I'm biased, but I'm excited about that too. I just didn't get a chance to play it.
Yeah, I think that we all got to see a fair share of different things, and I don't want to trample too much on the content that we have to provide, that capital C content of the interviews that we did. But like Iudin Chronicles Rising, which we got to play as well, I really kind of fell in love with that. I'd never even heard of it before. It's apparently a Bloodstained situation where this is actually a prequel game that's coming out before the main title. That's more of a JRPG. This one's more action RPG. Like there was a diversity of the kinds of things that you could see that I was actually quite surprised about, especially considering how little there was AAA representation. There was still a lot to see. Also, I know for a fact that both Geoff and I spent probably too much money at the limited run booth when we went there.
Yeah, I regret nothing. I also hit up all the other retro game booths as well, and I feel very good about what I have come home with.
What did you end up finding?
Let's see. I found Tobal #1.
Oh, that's right.
With the demo disc, and the discs are pristine. They look great. And I got Star Wars for the Game Gear. I got... Oh, geez, what else did I get? I got a bunch of stuff. Those were at one booth. And yeah, no, I picked up a couple of limited runs and a few others that if I sit here and think about it, they'll come back to me. But I feel like Tobal #1 and Star Wars for the Game Gear was kind of the extreme ends of the spectrum of like meme trash for Game Gear. And like I've been looking for Tobal for a while, so that felt nice. I also like impulse bought those after our panel because I was just riding the high. It's like I need to do something.
I continue my quest for Legends of Legaia.
Yeah, we were unable to find it.
And now that I know them, I'm keeping an eye out for it.
Oh, thank you.
No worries.
One day.
Yeah.
I mean, we all got our fair share of merch to buy and stuff.
God.
Of course, the BioWare Gear Store had some rep there. BioWare wasn't there, or EA, but the BioWare Gear Store was. And so, of course, Frankie and I bought stuff. I bought an N7 hat.
I didn't buy anything for myself. I only bought something for John. They didn't actually have anything there that I wanted because the stuff that they had, I already had. It's just like, I don't need any of this. I have this.
I love this. That's why I bought it years ago.
I also picked up some stuff from Limited Run, including a physical release of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game for the Nintendo Switch, which comes with a Clash at Demon Head concert ticket in the box, which was really dope.
Yeah, that one's a pretty full package, even the standard. I was really excited when I got that in the mail.
Yeah, a like faux Super Nintendo instruction manual inside. There was a lot to see at this PAX, and like while we've said it several times at this point that there wasn't AAA representation there was still a lot to see and do, and I actually like that indie games got to be the focus this year. I don't feel like I saw anything that I saw. I don't think I saw anything bad. I saw stuff that maybe wasn't right for me or stuff that I wasn't terribly interested in, but still looked interesting on its own.
I mean, I had fun with Outshine, but that's an arcade typing game, so...
Yeah, I liked it too.
Yeah. That was one where I was like, you both can play. I do the 2-finger typing method and have no interest in demoing this game, but I will watch y'all demo it.
That's the kind of game where if I turn it on, I will lose my entire day.
Yep.
Because I will just be typing all day. I blame my father for this because my father, like, trained me as a typist while I was growing up. He was like, you're gonna already know how to do the skills that'll make you a valuable employee.
I mean, I definitely did take a typing class in high school, but that was just out of filling a gap when I had to drop out of a class. But the skills have stayed.
Yeah, I was never a strong typist. I took typing classes and still wasn't a strong typist. It's just not a skill I have. I can do a lot of things really well. Typing fast is not one of them.
I don't know the crossover of touch typing versus playing the piano, but I'm sure there's been some study. I do both, so I don't know. But it was a lot of fun, and that was a fun start to Saturday, because I think that was the first...
Yeah, that was like the first thing we did.
Yeah.
It kind of set the pace in a nice way.
Yeah, and you'll get to hear an interview about that as well in our interview episode. I also want to talk a little bit about some of the panels that we got to see. I got to see, of course, friends of the show, Eric Van Allen and Kenneth Shepard, with some other incredible panelists, did a panel called Defending Your Problematic Fave, where they each took a character who is incredibly problematic, not only within their own narrative, but kind of broadly, and like defending why they're actually great. There were villains, there were heroes. It was one person, Nikki from Fanbyte, defended Reggie Fils-Aimé and like brought up ridiculous facts, like how he was for a period of time one of the executive board members, I believe, of Panda Express. Like, it's just, and like talked about how he has the superpower to transform into a puppet from that one Nintendo Direct. Like, it was off the wall. It was really good, and definitely glad I spent my time doing it. I also got to see the State of Final Fantasy panel, which was by Blood God, Axe of the Blood God, which was a great panel. Just like listening to them talk about what is great about Final Fantasy, what hasn't been great about it, and kind of what they see for the future of it. There were a bunch of really cool panels that I got to see, and I love that about PAX East and conventions in general, that if you really want to find things that suit your interest, you can go hunt them down in this space. I like that there were plenty of gay panels with gay people on them, but we brought the gayest panel to PAX East.
We did.
Talking about queer representation.
Bold statement.
I would say so. If you want to fight us in the comments that your panel was gayer, bring it.
I'd like to hear about it.
Yes, same.
I did not attend any panels. I spent a lot of time in the quiet room playing Stardew Valley.
That's fair. Now, this was also, again, first convention in a while. It was a lovely reminder of how you can't do everything.
Yes. True.
And for a lot of reasons, we didn't have as much time as we'd have liked on the floor. Some of that was just sheer anxiety about the panel on Friday.
Yeah.
But I realized right before we left that there was a whole Games Done Quick section. People were just speed running. I at no point sat down and watched. I love Games Done Quick. I love speed runs. Never watched it. There's tons of games that people are talking about that are incredible and worth your time. I didn't get to see them. And that's because of just one man.
That's true.
And I know that the next time I go to a convention, whenever that may be, as everything evolves in the world, that I will try to do more because I want to. And because we are very much on this show, we like to champion the indie space because I'm very firm, and that's where all the good ideas happen. That's where all the cool stuff happens. That's where the favorites form.
Yeah.
And I found some new favorites, some future favorites, and knowing that there's ones that they're going to find me later. And it's like, oh, this was at PAX East. Really? Damn it. And that makes me excited too.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, I'm glad that Frankie brought up the AFK room, because I feel like what I love about PAX East as a convention versus a lot of others is there are all sorts of different spaces. There are spaces where you can just play games. You can rent consoles and play stuff together. There are AFK rooms and quiet rooms where you can kind of just chill and not have to worry about anything. You know, I appreciate that the space is curated for every kind of person who attends this event, not just one kind of person.
And I imagine that if someone doesn't have a space like that, that one can be made.
Yeah.
And would be made in the future.
For sure. Is there anything else that folks wanted to bring up that we saw? This episode is a little scattershot. It's a few weeks after we attended the event, and I, for one, started a new day job and moved, so my brain is shot. But I can't really think of anything that I haven't mentioned that I wanted to talk about. Of course, it was great seeing all my friends at the event, making new friends as well, who I've stayed in touch with since, getting to know people better within the game scene that I didn't know that well, like Lucas, who writes for Prima Games, we got to spend a ton of time with, and we'll be coming on a future episode of this show to talk about the sequel to the greatest video game movie ever made, Sonic the Hedgehog. But like, it was just nice to get to spend time with folks of like minds and get to know them better and get to interact and continue to grow this community in this space.
To go off of that, I completely agree. One of the things I wrote down as being the thing that I loved the most about the experience was that we spent so much time together and we got to talk about things that we hope to change for our network, ways that we want to improve our shows, ways that we want to improve our skills and ourselves. And we hashed out a game that I'm working on and inspired a new project. So like so many really creative, really productive things happened just when we were in a room talking and just like passing the time.
Agreed. There is a lot of value in having just a little bit of extra time, and conventions can allow for that.
Yeah.
You know, whether a couple of folks in a hotel room or panels or just kind of hanging out in between time. Yeah, amazing stuff like that happens. That's community. That's the good shit.
Also, Matt talks a lot of shit, but he loves us.
Yeah. Can't let everybody know my secrets. Got to keep up this rough exterior.
Ruining your cred.
Ruin my street cred, yeah.
You're a marshmallow, Veronica Mars.
I know. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And I think it's hard to remember that. You know, we've all spent so much time digitally and apart. You know, both of you are my co-hosts on 2 different shows. And like, we spend a ton of time recording those podcasts and a lot less time.
And we say and do a lot during that.
Right. But spend a lot less time not doing that, especially lately. And so it's nice when we got to do not that and just exist and just be.
Yeah. My favorite thing was how I did such a really good job packing for PAX East. For entertainment for myself, because it's a gaming convention, I brought my analog pocket. That was a lot of fun. I played some Game Gear games on it. I packed an adapter that would let me plug the Switch to a TV so I didn't have to bring the dock. I packed like 20 games, like a bunch of multiplayer games, some cool stuff I wanted to play, and completely did not pack my Switch. I left it in the dock to charge. I had everything for Switch gaming but the Switch.
It was brilliant.
And I put it in the special bag that Switch games go in, and I didn't realize my mistake until I took it out and went, this doesn't feel right. The weight's off. Didn't realize it when I put it in there. That was my favorite part. It meant I played more Shinobi 2, The Silent Fury.
I think the only thing to complain about from that weekend was the terrible Chinese food that we had that one day.
Oh my God. Yeah. We ordered Chinese food to the hotel room and it was so bad.
It was the worst. But then we had excellent food that night.
Yes, that's true.
Oh, the Korean barbecue.
Yeah.
That saved it.
Lots of good things to eat in Boston. And shout out to Brendan Groom from the Pass the Controller podcast for hooking us up with some suggestions of where to go and where to eat.
Yes.
Oh my God, yes.
That kind of wraps up our thoughts on PAX East. We hope to go again. We hope to go to other conventions as CPOV as a group. We're trying to get some of the other podcasters on the network as well to go to those events. But it was fun to have the video game folk who at least have video game podcasts. There are other gamers on the network who don't have their own video game podcasts, but the ones who host the video game podcasts to get to go and represent the network at a video game convention was a lot of fun.
So what we're trying to say is bully the rest of our pod siblings into going to conventions.
Exactly.
You have the power.
Yeah, that's true.
As long as they feel safe and as long as the state of things are safe,
Oh, no,
because
that's valid.
Yes.
as safe as everyone tried to be, there were still breakthrough infections and there was still everything that went on there, all of the excitement about the games and everything else. I wanted to save like personal anecdotes and things for towards the end. And the fact is that I was definitely nervous about COVID up to 12 hours before we left. I still was, but basically to the point of like, do I duck out of this? And I'm happy to say that through luck and everything else, I came out of it fine. And not everyone was so lucky. And that is an unfortunate consequence or an unfortunate state of things right now, and that's going to ebb and flow. And we do hope to go to future conventions, but always with a sense of safety. And certainly for me, I don't want to speak for everyone here, but I feel it kind of is. That is also part of being part of the community. looking after yourself and looking after others and practicing that sort of courtesy. It's why we've done so much talking over Zoom, because that's the way to keep people safe. And as we navigate what the convention space is going to be for the future, I remain hopeful and optimistic. And when circumstances align like this again, I can't wait to go to the next one.
Yeah, same here. I agree wholeheartedly. I think that we were as safe as we could be. We were masked at all times, all of that stuff. And we tested every morning to make sure we were negative. We also understood the risk going to this event. There would be some. And as long as things continue to be safe and get safer, I agree. I would like to have more of a presence at live events and conventions.
Yeah, and folks should be able to do this. I know the idea of to your own sense of safety or your own comfort level is thrown around, but definitely for attendance to these things, don't let the excitement cloud your own sense of safety. I do want to put that out there. I don't mean to be a downer, but I do want to say that and put that into the world.
Well said. If you have specific questions about PAX East or stuff you want to know, stuff that you might have saw there that you were curious if we did, certain folks in the industry that we might have seen that you were curious if we got to see or interact with, please let us know. As always, we love chatting with y'all about this. If you were at PAX East, but you didn't come say hi and you saw us, well, you should have come say hi. But either way, let us know. I was shocked at the reception of our panel. Not that I didn't think people would come, but just
pleasantly surprised
that there were a lot more people than I expected. And it was great getting to meet and interact with every one of you who did. Again, as we mentioned at the top of the show and throughout in the feed, simultaneously as this episode, we are going to drop a series of interviews that myself, Geoff, and Frankie all did while at the event with a bunch of different great creators and people. So definitely give that a listen. Some incredible games were featured there, and some of the stuff we mentioned here, plus a lot more.
Yeah, and if we missed a few and you want to know further thoughts, whether we mentioned it or not, let us know. Reach out to us on that. If you saw a game and you want us to know about it from PAX East, or if we didn't mention it, we might have seen it, any of that, we want to hear from you. So you can reach out to us, Twitter, Instagram, Gmail, Fun and Games Pod, across all of those. You can go to certainpov.com, check out episodes of this show, side quests, Reignite, so many other fantastic Certain POV shows, and find a permanent invite link to our Discord server where we continue talking about games, comics, movies, TV shows, and just whatever other wild things just seemed like a good idea at the time. Just part of the weird, nerdy community.
Of course, if you have an opportunity to rate and review this on your podcast platform of choice, especially Apple Podcasts, it helps us to get featured and more folks to find the show. You can reach out to us at Fun and Games Pod just about everywhere on the internet. Please interact with us. We need it to survive and live. We need your attention. But we also just love interacting with all y'all. The question of the day that Geoff mostly curates. Occasionally I'll be like, hey, we should ask this question. But mostly it's Geoff has gotten a lot of great traction and feedback and interaction. We love chatting with y'all on our feed about all of these awesome games and moments in gaming.
And to that effect, Frankie, thank you for reminiscing about 2 weeks ago with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing a hotel with me. And so many meals and panic attacks.
Likewise.
And all the things.
We were very emotional.
It was a lot of vulnerability bonding. It was fine.
It's fine. It's fine. We're all closer now. It's great. Yeah. And I like it. I like y'all. I like everyone here and everyone listening.
Yes, same. Frankie, why don't you tell folks where they can find you online and find all the other stuff you do besides Reignite?
So currently the only other thing that I do is Archives of the Dragon, though that seems to be on hiatus as well, apparently, because we can't all get our shit together and form a good schedule. But there are still episodes for you to watch on YouTube and on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Archives of the Dragon. You can also see our episodes on YouTube, as I mentioned. You can find me on Twitter at iHoardLibraries. And also, if you need a moderator for one of your panels, come talk to me. Apparently, I do a super good job.
It's true.
Recommended by us. And so, whether through those shows, our shows, about PAX and everything else, we want to hear from all of you because this is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.
We've made difficult decisions.
And there are still more ahead of us.
2 people aren't enough to save the galaxy.
We need the toughest,
smartest,
deadliest allies.
We need you.
We need you to join us.
And listen to Reignite.
A certain point of view podcast about storytelling
Love.
and Mass Effect.
Join us every other Thursday as we fight for the fate of an entire galaxy.
You can find us everywhere you get your podcasts.
Or at certainpov.com/reignite.
We're counting on you.
We should go.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.